Hello again, everybody. Thanks for joining us one more time for Meet the Candidates, our general election edition. I'm Clint Cummins, CEO of Memphis Medical Society. I'm joined today by Dr. George Woodbury, our legislative chairman and a dermatologist here in the area. Thanks, Dr. Woodbury, for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
And our special guest today is from District 95, Republican incumbent, Mr. Kevin Vaughan. Kevin, thank you for joining us today.
No, Clint, glad to be here and glad to have the opportunity to speak to your members.
Thank you. We're going to get right to the questions and get you out of here pretty quickly. Back in the summer, Kevin, Governor Lee issued Executive Order 15. One of the things in that order granted nurse practitioners the ability to practice autonomously. What's your position on the scope of practice of a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant and their ability to practice independently?
Well, for one thing, Clint, let me say that the governor has been doing the best he can to manage this crisis from an executive level. He's had an extraordinary amount of authority given to him, and the decisions that he makes in the heat of the battle may or may not survive a legislative session. So I understand the reason that he did that, but as you and many of your members know, that the scope of practice laws come through my subcommittee, and we had an effort last year from both the PAs as well as the NPs to expand their scope, and frankly, the members of my subcommittee did not feel like that was the appropriate thing to do. That was pre-pandemic. I don't know that anything has occurred since that time that would change that. But again, we'll be getting new committees upon our next election. I tend to think I'll have some role in healthcare, but I think we've sent a pretty strong message that we believe that having the appropriate professionals tending to people's health is important, and everyone serves a vital role in that, but everyone also needs to stay in their lane with regards to the amount of training and professional registry that they have.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. We're going to keep rolling with the questions. Throughout the pandemic, there's a lot of difficult decisions having to be made, whether you're a business owner, a parent, a policymaker like you, or all three like you, right? And just about everybody, that force us to balance our personal physical health and even the community health with economic health and the whole, getting back to business dynamic. Can you just talk about your thought process? You're obviously encountering a lot of that. You alluded to the governor having to really encounter some of that on a daily basis. But what's your thought process when that gets put in front of you?
Well, first off, let me say personal liberty is a scary thing. It's a dangerous thing. The more liberty we have as individuals, the more we tend to be able to impact those around us. There has to be a balance. The way that I look at things is there's got to be a balance between the liberty, how your liberty affects the people around you. Do you harm people with it? That's a difficult situation to balance. I know that one of the issues that has come out of this pandemic and reviewing the governor's scope of his emergency powers, as well as it's caused us to look at the statutes for the 6 autonomous health departments around the state that frankly don't report to, their authority doesn't come from the public, they're appointed bureaucrats. We believe that if their case, if they make a bad decision, the public doesn't have any redress against them. Whereas as an elected official, like myself, every 2 years people vote on whether or not to send me back and allow me to make decisions anymore. So there's some things there that we look at that vary from the practical to the theoretical to personal. And so all of that is in this big cauldron that's constantly churning among us. And it's no easy, clear-cut decisions, I can tell you that.
Makes sense. Thank you. Kind of along the same lines, it serves to assume that at some point we're going to have to talk about cuts in the budget and having to face a lot of these revenue decreases. Can you talk about when faced with having to make cuts, how you prioritize those, and would healthcare fall into those cuts?
I don't foresee healthcare falling into those cuts. Frankly, that's been the focus of this entire pandemic, making sure that people are taken care of. Because frankly, you can have the greatest park system in the world, but it doesn't matter if if you have no money to maintain it and people are too ill to go visit it. So I see the 1-2 priorities that it's evident in our budgeting each year. We're not doing that great with education right now because of the impact of health effects. Health is our #1 spending in the state. It occupies the largest part of the state budget. I foresee that to be the case in the coming years. But I will say this too, is that don't necessarily assume that we're going to have budget cuts. We've been very fortunate to budget conservatively here in Tennessee. We're ranked as one of the most fiscally conservative and well-managed businesses in the sphere of, if you want to think of state governments as being businesses. By the way, a little trivia, we're right now, we used to be about equivalent to Coca-Cola. Now we're equivalent to Tyson Foods with regards to our annual revenues. So we're in the chicken business as opposed to the soft drink business. But from a Fortune 500 standpoint, that's where the business of the state lies. But our priority is healthcare. Education is the second largest budget. But I can tell you that the two things that the citizenry demand is good healthcare options as well as public safety. That's the starting point for budget priorities. And then quickly we've got to come in behind that with education, because if we don't educate them, then public safety will take care of them. So that's kind of the priority. So I don't see, and we've been fortunate enough too that the federal government is just printing money and replacing things. We've been fortunate that we haven't had an increase in our unemployment insurance, because when we received the CARES Act money, the first round from the federal government, we put that into the unemployment insurance fund, and we've been funding a lot of our unemployment through these monies so we don't deplete our stock of them. Our budget, we cut $1.5 billion out last year, and guess where we found it? We found it laying around in departments who had been retaining earnings in the business sense, and we decided, as opposed to raising taxes or cutting spending, that we went to the departments and reclaimed those dollars so that we could fund the endeavors that we felt were important.
All right. Sounds good, Kevin. Those are all of our questions. I wanted to leave some time here at the end. Feel free to talk about any issues you want, do a little stumping if you want. Just take a couple minutes here if you'd like.
Sure. I'll sit here. It's kind of funny. I'm watching myself talk to myself on this. It's very, I'm noticing quite the sheen on my forehead. I'd like to say just thank you to the medical professionals in and around the Mid-South. I think that the jobs that you do day in, day out, keeping us healthy and tending to those in need is really a calling that's easy to look over, but really stands out in a moment like this. And I would say that my providers do a great job of keeping me and my family healthy. And so from that standpoint, thank you. The other thing is, I'd like to say thank you to the medical community too, because they've always been big supporters of my campaign. I think that they understand where I look at things through an analytical process. I'm an engineer by trade. I like to claim myself to be a man of science. So I appreciate, and my mom wished I'd been a doctor. I was pre-med for a semester though. And which qualifies me to be a chairman of a very powerful health subcommittee. So I want your constituency to know that they have someone that has their interests in mind, that sees a lot of the same issues their way, and more than anything is available to you. My contact information is readily available. My office is in Collierville. I'm not one of these guys that if I'm not at the Capitol working while we're in session, I'm in Collierville and easily reachable. So I just want to say that I hope to still be here with you folks after this election, and if so, I'll continue along the path that you've come to expect.
All right, that sounds good. Kevin, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us, and good luck to you on the campaign trail.
Oh, hey, thank you very much.
All right,
Thank
take care.